Welcome to USALA Special Edition with myself, Marilyn Rodriguez. And today, as the first episode of Special Edition, we have a special guest. He is a former judge of the Court of Common Pleas here in Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. And he's also the first Latino Puerto Rican to graduate from law school at Temple University. He has many more stories, and he has done so much, not only here in Philadelphia, but I'll say national. So let's welcome Honorable Judge Nelson Diaz.
And Marilyn, it's great to be with you, and thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate you having me.
It's truly an honor. Thank you for your generous time as we trying to set up for this special edition. Thank you for being so patient.
Hey, paciencia y fe.
That's right. Not from here, not from there. No soy ni de aquí ni de allá. I wonder what that means. And we're going to talk as we move up in the conversations today. We're going to talk about what that really means for you. You was a former judge of the Court of Common Pleas here in Philadelphia. And for my understanding, you also in 2004 became the first independent director of PICO, which we know as PICO Energy. Is that correct?
That's right. I was very fortunate. PICO merged with a company in Chicago called ComEd, and that developed the company called Exelon, which, as you know, has over $6 billion in assets and has over 400,000 employees throughout the country. It's called a Fortune 100 company, and very few Latinos and very few Puerto Ricans have ever gotten the opportunity to serve on corporate boards. And it's really something that I've been trying to work with and trying to develop so that there be more Latinos on corporate boards, because companies need their participation, and also they need our voices on these companies. Yes. And so this has been something that I've given almost 30 years of my life to try to promote and to open doors.
And thank you so much, and for being the Latino at this outstanding company, you know, that's still big across.
Yeah, we keep the lights on for you.
Thank you. I need it, especially for these transmissions. You was also a part of the Temple Hospital Board of Directors as a chairperson in 1975. Yeah. How was that?
Yeah, that was a tough situation at the time because the hospital was going through bankruptcy, and so was the first board of people from outside of the university that was involved in trying to direct the activities at the hospital. To the extent that today we still have the hospital after so many other years, it means that we were able at least to keep it alive and to provide services. And now we've expanded. You know, we have Fox Chase, which is a cancer center, and we have a hospital in the Puerto Rican community on Front and Lehigh. And we have other areas. So we serve the largest portion of the Latino community in Philadelphia is served by Temple Hospital.
From my understanding, the one up front and Lehigh was formerly known as Episcopal.
That's correct. Episcopal still carries the name. Everybody knows it as Episcopal, and it really provides local assistance there in terms of whatever is necessary, including drug and alcohol and some of the other social service needs within the community.
Wow. I also have to mention that my firstborn was born at Episcopal.
All my kids were born at Temple. So congratulations. We have something in common. I have 3 children that were all born at Temple Hospital. And the first one, I couldn't afford to have my wife at a hospital because they didn't provide me any financial assistance. Wow. And so there was a grant that one of the former presidents of the university got. And so my firstborn, whose birthday happens to be the 25th of June, pretty soon, and she was the beneficiary of being firstborn at Temple with help from a foundation. And my wife did not get to a hospital uh, till she was 6 months pregnant because I couldn't afford it. I was a first year law student at Temple.
Wow. As you know, I'm going backwards in your career. So we started with what you are now and we're going backwards. And so I also know that in 1993, the President of the United States appointed you as the General Counsel to the US Department of Housing and Urban Development. How that was that experience for you?
I think that I probably helped more poor people in that job than in any other job that I've ever had. Um, Henry Cisneros, who was the secretary of what I consider to be a genius of a man, and he wanted the president to appoint me to this position. And to some extent, I didn't want to leave Philadelphia, but I eventually conceded. And I have to tell you that we settled over 22 lawsuits,
Wow.
$9 billion in assistance. And I'll give you an example of one of the lawsuits that we settled was in Texas, in Plano, Texas, where there were 300 families in a high riser built in a smelt factory, isolated from the entire community. And many children were getting sick and ill as a result of it. And it was 12 years in litigation, and I was able to resolve that lawsuit. We also got rid of high risers throughout the
Wow.
country. Baltimore's example and Philadelphia is another example because you don't need high rises. Not everybody needs high rises like New York City. And in addition to that, we did what is known today as the Diaz opinion, which we put market rate units in the city next to people who are working class and who are wealthy, and so that developers and public housing can be together. That way, they're not totally isolated, and it's very desirable housing. And so now everybody who is in public housing really enjoys it. It doesn't want to give up their units because they're in great neighborhoods and they're well taken care of.
So I was doing a little bit of research about you and why public housing uh, is so important to you. How did that
Yeah,
touch your life?
that's a great question because I grew up in public housing for the first time in my life when I was 10 years old. It was the first time that I ever slept in a bed. I was asthmatic. I was pretty sick as a young kid. I lived in tenements that were sort of rat infested. And public policy really makes a difference in a person's life. And so it made a big difference in my life. I then was able to get my health together. I was able to enjoy the abilities to be able to play baseball and be a part of a regular life development. And I grew too. I was a pretty short kid during that period of time, and I also grew. And it was important for me to have a child life at that time.
Hmm.
And since then, I've been pretty healthy, and that's why we have to have public housing available for people who do not have housing. We have to have sanitary and very livable quarters, and we have to enforce the management requirements to make sure that everybody lives in quality housing. And so I've been a very major policy
Wow.
pusher in this area. And also, I've also pushed for the issue of the fact that the people discriminate against many other people in fair
Hmm.
housing. So fair housing has also been one of my emblems of work in my life. And so that people, because when I tried to get a house in Philadelphia in the Spring Garden area back in 1977, they wouldn't pass my offer because I was Latino. And I filed a complaint, and nobody did anything with it. And I had a house in Kensington that
Hmm.
was totally ripped off the weekend that I bought it. So I
Wow.
suffered from the fact that discrimination in housing is so evident. And so I was able to really make a dent in enforcing fair housing laws throughout the country. And just this past week, I was able to make sure that the rules for fair housing continue as they were before the last administration.
Thank you so much on my behalf, and for everyone that's on public housing that has struggled for many years, and you making it better for a lot of them, making more fair. It's.
We just need a lot more because there's
Hmm.
not enough.
Yes.
And there's so many people on waiting lists. And there are some good organizations that are working in our community by trying to develop housing. APM and ASE and
Yes.
Norris Square and Esperanza, all working together to try to get housing for the community. But there is still not enough public housing units for our community.
Why do you think is that? Why would it take to make it better?
Yeah, well, the one reason obviously is the lack of appropriation by the federal government.
Mm.
The second reason is that there are, since we came in last, we're on these waiting lists, and there's so many people who have come in before us, and so these waiting lists are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years behind, and so it's
Wow.
a long time to wait to be able to get a unit that is empty so that we can move people in. We have plenty of land in the city of Philadelphia that is the city provided, and the state and the federal government provided enough financial abilities to create public housing. It could be filled in a very short period of time.
Now, do you think that's going to be even possible with all these new constructions and people that are coming in to invest in the city?
That's a great question. You're talking about the fact that gentrification is
Yes.
occurring throughout our city and it's pushing people out of the community. If we have public housing, you can't get pushed out because you can't sell public housing. You have to
Mhm.
continue to manage it and keep it there. So, for example, if you have very major development in Bainbridge today, which is the example of what I talk about that created the Diaz opinion that
Mhm.
allows market rate housing next to public housing, that is not able to be sold unless you replace it with something. So as a result, you have permanent public housing there. It's important to provide that kind of source of housing. And if gentrification occurs, public housing stays. If you have home ownership, then you have gentrification you can't control. So people then can sell their houses. And as a result, what happens is people from outside of the community come in and move us out. And then where do we go? It's very difficult to continue to move and to go elsewhere when that's occurring in the city of Philadelphia. And it's occurring in big time. You have a lot of New
Yes.
Yorkers who are coming in and living in Philadelphia and working in New York City, and
Correct.
then there's a lot of people because of the COVID that have learned how to work virtually. And as a
Mhm.
result, they can live anywhere. So many of them have moved into an affordable community. And Philadelphia is a lot more affordable than many of the other communities surrounding us.
And how do you see this moving forward?
I think it's a real problem. I think it's a real dilemma.
Hmm.
One, because you need workers in the city. We provide the highest service workers in a community like Philadelphia, where tourism is a big issue, hotels is a big issue, and
Yes.
many of the work entry level jobs happen in Philadelphia, like the hospitals, and some of the other service areas. So I believe that we are in major trouble with regard to providing adequate housing for people in our community. People, particularly the Latino community, is
Hmm.
suffering greatly from the lack of housing. There's a lot of developments that are occurring in
Hmm.
some other communities, like Strawberry Mansion. There are a number of units that are being developed there,
Hmm.
but in the Latino community, there is a lack of real public injection of monies into developing housing.
A lot of conversations that have to happen to
Well,
make
not only
changes.
that, the people forget that, and that's part of my story, that we are citizens by birthright, and
Mm,
so they treat us as foreigners. So because we are Spanish speaking, they assume that we're all aliens in the
yeah,
United States, and so no soy de aquí, ni soy de allá. So when you go back to Puerto Rico after you've been here quite a few years, they say, well, tú eres de allá, tú eres un Puerto Rican o New Yorican.
exactly.
Y cuando estamos aquí, tú eres un extranjero. You know,
Mhm.
you're an alien. And so and we are citizens by birthright since 1917, and
That's right.
the United States has possessed us for over 100 years, since 1898. So it's something that we need to educate the community, and I tried as much as I could during this period of time to
Mhm.
try to get the colonial mentality out of our community and to let them know. And I knocked everything out because I hit the table, to let them know that we are citizens by birthright. And then here I am. I came back.
Okay.
A veces I get extremely angry when people
Yeah,
treat us the way they treat us, because we have given for the wars, World
we
War
had
One,
given
World
so
War
much.
Two, Korean War, and everything else, and they still think that we're a bunch of foreigners. And so that's something that you can see from my from banging the table here, that is so important to my community.
And we also need more representation
Yeah,
in state
but that
level, I believe.
yeah, but that's part of the colonial mentality. We don't vote as a community in elections. We did vote for president, by the way. Uh, for this president, we have about 1 million Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania, and and Biden only won by 80,000 votes, and we there was over 200,000 Puerto Ricans who voted in the presidential election. But we have so much more power if the people participated and voted. And you can see it in Orlando. In Orlando, the Puerto Rican
Mhm.
community is participating, and as a
Yeah.
result, they elected a congressman, they've elected local managers, and so forth. And here, for some reason, in Pennsylvania, our community does not take the power that they can have.
And we need to take the power, definitely. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back. And we're going to talk more about your trajectory and all the stuff that you have done, not only here in Philadelphia, but nationally.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back. And we have a very, very special guest today, Honorable Nelson A. Diaz. And we were talking about his experiences as the Council of the Development, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And we went a little further and he got very excited because it is true. There's a lot of things that still needs to be happen so we could feel from here, right?
And Marilyn, you're doing a great service, because the Boricuas need to understand that they have so many rights and so many opportunities as citizens that they don't have when they were in Puerto Rico. And
Mhm.
so Puerto Rico as a colony, you have no vote and no voice in the United States. You have a voice and a vote here in the mainland. And so I really appreciate the fact that you are educating our community in the need for them to take hold of the citizenship so they can make it better for our children and our grandchildren.
And thank you for everything that you have done and you continue to do. And here I also learned that you serve as member of the corporate boards um, at the leg. One of the corporates that you participated was in the Leg Mason family of funds.
Yes, that was one of my first boards, and I learned considerably amount on the issue of investments. So
Mm-hmm.
when I got to the Exelon board, it really helped me make a contribution on the board level because they were mismanaging their pension funds. And so if you manage your pension funds right, you're making more of a profit. So you have to take less from the profit and you get more for the shareholders and more for them to be able to spend. So every situation I took as a learning opportunity for the next opportunity that was available for me. And that was my
And
first
also to
board.
represent and also to represent us as Latino, and making it more available maybe for others that come
Well,
after you.
that's yeah. Well, I've dedicated over 30 years to try to promote Latinos on corporate boards. There are very few Latinos who have served on corporate boards, and less fewer Latina women who have served on corporate boards. One of the things that we know as Latinos is that Latinas are the smartest business people in this country, and they
Mm-hmm.
open up more businesses than anybody else. Despite that, there's less than a tenth of a percent of Latinas on corporate boards. And Latinos is like 2.7%. And so it's really, we're 18% of the population. And it's really horrendous that we don't get the opportunities to be able to make an impact and make a better profit for the company at the same time serving our communities. And they don't understand us. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that if they had us on the boards, they would do a lot better.
And so, are they? Do you think they're looking to recruit more members that are within the Latino community?
Since the promotion of Black Lives Matters, there's been more African Americans that have gotten on boards. Uh, Through the organization that I founded and started, Latino Corporate Directors Association, we have had 23 members selected this year, and more than half of them have been women, Latina women. But I still don't see that much of an appointment because, you know, African Americans go first right now in terms of thinking of diversity. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
White women have gone from about 5% to about 25% of
Mm-hmm.
corporate board members, and then you have us, and then the Asians right behind us. So we're always an afterthought, them thinking that we haven't had it as hard as
Mm-hmm.
African Americans, but we have. We have been discriminated. You know, the border took over Texas and New Mexico and California. They were here way before many of the settlers came from Britain, from New England, and from all of the British Isles, and
Mm-hmm.
we were here before that. And to some extent,
Yes.
we have not gotten the benefit of a participation in the American society that we should, particularly in the economic and corporate community.
Nelson,
So,
this
so, so,
interview has been so interesting. We have so much to talk about, and all this information is very critical. People needs to know this, and because we're not informed, we a lot of information that I found about you on your trajectory. I didn't know about you. I know a few, but learning about you as I was getting ready for the interview, I found it to be amazing. I also found that you was the city solicitors of Philadelphia, attorney for the Philadelphia Gas Works, also the counsel to Philadelphia Airport, and the water department, as well as the all city personnel.
yeah, yeah. As city solicitor, you represent everybody that works in the government, and so it's a great opportunity to make an impact
Mhm.
within that. But one of the things, I started out in what I called El Bloque de Oro on Fifth Street, and
Yes.
that was my first economic development project, and so I have been heavily involved in all of the community organization. I founded ASE, which is providing housing. I've been representing APMs forever, and the one that runs it was my mentee. I founded Congreso,
Wow.
and I have been heavily involved with Pat DiCarlo in the North Square Civic Association, and I'm pretty close to Esperanza. So those are the organizations that serve our community, but they don't have enough resources to provide the housing opportunities that are necessary. Housing is so important because it can change a person's life if you have sanitary, good quality housing. And then as city solicitor, I was heavily involved in making sure that we funded some of the projects in the city. I helped found El Taller Puertorriqueño
Mm,
when I was the chairman of Aspira. And so that enabled us to give some money to the arts in the community. And so through the city, we were able to help Carmen Febo develop the Taller Puertorriqueño that she has
yes.
today. And she's done a tremendous job there in that wonderful center.
They
And
they
so that
moved to the new they moved from where they were originally. They're still on Fifth Street, but they moved to a bigger facility, which is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful and
that's
bigger
right.
for our
Yep.
community.
Yep.
Thank you so
And
much for all of that.
yeah. Well, I think that if we have an opportunity to serve, whether it's in the private sector or the public sector, if they pick me, they're going to get a Puerto Rican who's going to try to bring more Puerto Ricans to the forefront because we have a lot of quality Latinos in this country that should be serving us. I took a mentee, for example, and this
Mhm.
mentee, and I talk about it in the book, this mentee is going to be the chairman of a major company in January of this year.
Wow.
A major Fortune 200 company on the stock exchange. So if you open a door and if you mentor and help someone through the process, they'll find out that we have the intelligence, the capacity, and the willingness to do better than those who think that we can't do anything at all. And that's what my message is hey, let's open doors. Somos de aquí, aunque no quieren sepan que somos de aquí. We're from here, even though people don't think that we are American citizens.
You are absolutely right. I have to say that I'm very proud to know that you was the first Puerto Rican to be admitted to the Pennsylvania Bar, the law school, and the first Latino judge in the Court of the Common Pleas in Pennsylvania, where you served for 12 years. Did you always knew you was going to be a lawyer?
No, no, my first love. I guess that's why I'm open doors in the business community was accounting.
Oh,
I really wanted to be an accountant and got a job as an accountant before I was recruited by Peter Leocoris to come to Temple Law School. When I came to Temple, I thought I made a big mistake because no Latino, no Puerto Rican had ever graduated from Temple Law School, and
wow.
no Puerto Rican had ever passed the Pennsylvania bar before me. But I made sure that I wouldn't be the last one. So the following year, I recruited a number of students, and the year after that, I recruited students. By the time I left, we had over 30 Latinos, particularly Puerto Ricanos, who had graduated from the law school and are practicing law. I'll give you an example of just one. The first Latina woman and the first Puerto Rican to pass the Pennsylvania bar was ambassador to El Salvador during the Obama administration. So you could
Wow.
see that if we're giving a chance, we'll take that opportunity and make it into something that contributes back to the society.
Wow, amazing. You was also appointed administrative judge by the Supreme Court. You received the National Institute for Justice Award for saving the courts 100. Do you guys hear this? 100 million in 10 years. That's pretty awesome.
Well, that was the biggest mistake I ever made too.
Well,
I took over the
tell me
court
more.
system. Yeah, I took over the court system because the city was bankrupt at the time,
Wow.
and there wasn't much financial sources. We needed a new courthouse for the criminal programs,
Mm,
and the city was bloated with a lot of employees, political employees. And so, in order to try to rectify that, I had to get rid of a lot of employees,
um,
and that's not easy.
mm,
In addition to that, the court system was backlogged 7 years, so all the cases were were way behind for 7 years. And in 18 months, I brought it up to 3 years, so that the system became very current, both the criminal and the civil system. And so I did things that people wouldn't do today. I took all the judges and put them on the criminal side to do criminal work and ran the civil courts with lawyers, with volunteer lawyers, and got rid
Wow.
of the backlog. And so judges are saying, hey, you're taking me out of a job. Well, it was important to clean up the system. So I was obviously got an award, but I was not a very favorite of my colleagues on the bench.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yeah.
It must be tough to be a well, it's tough to be a lawyer, but it's also, I guess, it's more tough to be a judge because you have to make final decisions. Does it always falls on you, or you go by what the
Well, when you have a jury, it's very easy because the jury sort of decides for you. But if you're doing cases without a jury, it becomes a lot more difficult in terms of deciding. And then I had a lot of issues with sexual abuse cases of children. And so
Mhm.
I would put a lot of people away who were involved in sexual abuse, and to some extent, I got so hard that I thought that man, I should go back to the civil side and do civil work instead of criminal work. But it is a very important concept to have. We don't have enough Latino judges, as you know, on
Yes.
the courts. We do have more in the federal courts than we have in the state courts. That gives you an example of how horrible it's been, the politics locally, to recognize the need to have us involved in the court system. Um,
Mhm.
and so we with the large community that we have, there is so much that has to be done. And I became a judge very young, and did it basically because I felt that the community needed to have someone represent them within the court system. It's the best job I ever had. And if Cisneros hadn't asked me to help them, I might still have continued to be a judge today, because I really enjoyed the fact of providing justice and the ability to be a limelight in the community.
During this time that you serve as a judge, any cases that you wish you have maybe handled differently? Anything in particular?
Yeah, you can look back, but when you first get on the bench, you don't have enough experience to realize what
Mhm.
kind of influence and power you really have. And so
Yes.
there were cases where if a person had decided to take the case without a jury,
Mhm.
I would have probably found them guilty or not guilty. Either way, there was a case in which a young lady had some landlord go in through her window and abused her, and there was bite marks, and the identification process was the bite marks. The jury didn't see that as an identification, the bite marks, and let the person go and found him not guilty. And that's a case lives with you all the time. And today, that's admissible evidence, and it's pretty good evidence to determine somebody who committed the act. But early on, people had doubts about forensic evidence that was not identifiable in a way in which you could sort of pinpoint the person. So that
Well,
was that was a tough one.
thank you for sharing that with us. And we're gonna take another short break. We'll be right back, and we're gonna talk about this baby that he got that's called Not From Here, Not From There, Ni de aquí, ni de allá. Regresamos pronto. We are back, and let's talk about the rice and beans, el arroz con habichuela.
Ah,
as my
el arroz
mother would
habichuela,
say.
no, y que dicen, arroz habichuela es como apple pie and baseball.
Yes, yes. So now let's get into your to this baby that you have, which is called Not From Here, Not From There, No Soy Ni de Aquí Ni de Allá. It was published in October 19 of 2018 by Temple Press. So how do you come about this title?
The when you read the book, you'll get a real sense of how important it is for people to realize that here I am. I'm 15 years old. I have not been given a quality education. I'm pretty much illiterate in two languages now, English and Spanish, and it looks like I'm going to be a total failure. Somehow, through the intervention of people in my life, I somehow changed my life around, and I go from a D student to an A student within a year. I then graduate. I can't get into a college. I go to college finally, start a junior college, and then go to the 4-year program. And I finish second in my class at St. John's University. I then decide that I can't get into any other schools or business schools, so I accept the job in a accounting firm at Arthur Young, which is one of the top accounting firms. And then all of a sudden, this guy Peter Lee, of course, recruits me and brings me to Temple. The whole system is that throughout my life, I've had to be discriminated and had to push to be able to get opportunities. So I hit a wall and somehow, I turn to the right and try to get to the next wall. And sometimes I get in, sometimes I don't. That's been the perseverance that is required to be able to make things happen. I filed lawsuits in Philadelphia for bilingual ballots so that people could vote in Spanish because somos ciudadanos, citizens by birthright. I filed lawsuits on bilingual education because we weren't getting education here. I I go after the law school because they don't have any Latinos and very few African Americans ever in the law school, and I fight them and I open the law school for Latinos. There are very few Latinos at Temple University, and so I take over, and take over means, I protest and sort of physically take over the university. And the president was nice enough to be able to negotiate with us. We had the Young Lords Party behind us helping, and the Aspira high school students in the city. And we opened the school for Latinos. Not enough, not enough, particularly Latinos locally, Puerto Ricans who need an education. Anyway, so all of those barriers, when I run for judge, I'm not supposed to win. I get 99% of the black vote is the only reason I win. Most whites didn't vote for me. Um, on and on and on. We are on our own. We're not Latino enough because we're not Mexicans. We're not black enough because we're not African Americans. And we're not white enough because no somos blanquito. We have a total diaspora is Taino, is black, and
Yes.
it's
A little bit of
Spanish.
everything.
That's right. So un sancocho. We're a mixture of many other backgrounds. And so if the world changed, it would be like us, by the way. But
Yes.
we have had to fight for everything. When I went to college and graduated, I was only 10% of the entire Puerto Rican population, which is over 2 million at the time,
Yes.
that graduated from a college. And even today, there's less than 10% of our community gets a graduate degree. So we have not been able to break the barriers here. And then a guy who has had experience in the energy business, in the legal business, and to some extent in the political world, goes back to Puerto Rico, and they say, well, tú no eres de aquí, tú eres de allá. You're from New York, so or Philadelphia, or from Washington,
Yes.
D.C. So we don't want your help, even though that's your patria, that's who you love, and you sing La Borinqueña and El Viejo San Juan, and all
Yes.
of those things that make you feel so, so dramatic about your homeland. and now they
Hmm.
don't want you either. El americanito ahora. So
And
that
you're so passionate too.
we're so. I mean, when Maria happened, so much support came from the Puerto Rican community here in the States. So we care about our people. The real problem is that they don't realize, particularly those who are in government, those who are in the leadership, they don't realize that we want to make contributions in Puerto Rico as well.
Yeah.
And as a result, I don't feel that we have are accepted in full condition, both here in the United States and there in my homeland of Puerto Rico.
Well, thank you for opening the doors for a lot of people. Hopefully, people can learn from your book and your experiences that you have opened many doors, and hopefully, we could grow these numbers as for our Latino population in graduating from college. Now, my next question was, what inspired you? So there was the answer. That inspired you. You know,
Yeah.
that was your inspiration. You was born in New York. Now let's go back because, as I said at the beginning, we're gonna go backwards here in the conversation. Let's go to 1946. Wow, that's a long
Yes.
time.
Well, yeah.
1946. Were your mom aboard that ship that was leaving from San Juan, Puerto Rico, to the
Yes.
mainland?
Yes.
Uh, Tell me what happened.
Well, my mother had a child, was about to have a child, and my father had a family, and she had a sister that lived in the Bronx. So, in those days, it was a very embarrassing situation.
Mhm.
My mother had only a third grade education, had worked as a maid since she was 9 years old in Puerto Rico in San Juan, and she did not know what to do. As a result, there was a ship called the Marine Tiger, which was a formerly a ship that was transporting World War II soldiers during the war, and became a cargo ship that brought 120,000 Puerto Ricans to New York because they needed workers. There was factories that were now generated. There were farms that needed to be picked up the crops. There were so many other steel workers and so many other factory type jobs that were available, and they didn't have the employees. So there was a
Mhm.
deal between the Puerto Ricans government, Muñoz Marin, and here that they would ship a lot of the workers here. And that was the beginning of the major first migration of Puerto Ricans. As you know,
Yeah,
the next migration, big migration, happened after the Hurricane Maria.
correct.
So my mother comes in a ship. She winds up being in my aunt's house, Pepita, in the Bronx, and I'm about to be born. So they take me to Bellevue Hospital. Why? Because Bellevue was a public hospital, and everybody thinks that I'm crazy because I was born in Bellevue. Bellevue is known as a mental institution, but it's also the best maternity hospital for poor women in the country. So it had
So
a
I
big
heard.
history. Yep. So
And
I'm born.
we have a picture for in the young days. We have that picture, Danny. We do have a picture there when you and your mom when you was born. This is
Well,
probably gonna bring a lot of memories. There
as you
you
get that
are,
picture, you see that
and
beautiful young kid, and that's my beautiful mother who
Maria.
sacrificed. Yep, who sacrificed her whole life to make sure that I survived in Harlem and survived from the gang's activities. And she was a very, very. I mean, I'll give you an example of how atrevida she was, how forward she was. She took me to a school, a Catholic school, and um, they were already oversubscribed enrolled, so they didn't have room for me. So
Mhm.
she says, "Okay." She leaves me in front of the school the opening day, and goes home and leaves me there alone. I'm 7 years
Wow.
old. I have no idea what to do, where to go. Well, these nuns come out and say, what are you doing here? I said, well, my mother said I got to go to school. And they said, well, are you enrolled? I said, she said I got to go to school. So eventually, eventually they accepted me at the school, and I finished school there, and that gave me a lot of my spirituality, in terms of trying to, I did the altar boy, the choir boy. I tried to do everything to behave, and because I had the language difficulty, I didn't realize that what I needed was
Mhm.
instructions in my language until I learned enough English, and that took a long time for me to capture. But that's my mother. My mother, she worked all her
Strong
time.
woman.
So yeah, she worked. She worked in the factories. She worked doing plastic covers when in the days when everybody had plastic covers in their furnitures,
I remember
and
those.
you couldn't
When you
get
get
up once you
stuck to
got
the chair,
yeah.
my
So
grandmother
she
had them.
yeah, so she did all of that to
Mhm.
essentially support me, because my stepfather never made more than $50 a week.
Wow.
He was era un campesino. He worked as a farm worker in Puerto Rico. When he came here, he basically working in restaurants or in doormen. In these buildings. I caddied to pay for my college expenses, and I worked on weekends, and I made more money caddying than he made working 40 days a week, 40 hours
Wow.
a week. Yeah.
I have
So,
your book here, by the way. The only thing that needs is your autograph.
oh, I
There
will
it
be
is.
there. I will be there. Make sure we'll set up a time, and we'll have some lunch. Maybe we'll go down to Front and Allegheny and have umafongo.
There you go. Remember our food.
Yeah.
In here we have a couple chapters. So we talk. You talk about your time in school and law school. You also talk your time. You talk about your time as a judge. And also I want to mention you did run for mayor. That was in 2014, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken.
Yes. Yes. I think that I wanted. I could have won if I had the African American community behind me, or if our entire community came out to vote. It was a very low turnout race, and one of the things that I always say is that we as Puerto Ricans, we support everybody. We're very open to everybody. We work against the immigration issues, and even though
Yeah.
we're citizens, we try to help people of color. We work in terms of the issues of LGBTQ. We do all of those things, but when it comes to be our turn, for some reason, we're not black
Mhm.
enough, or we're
Yeah.
not Latino enough. And so you can see it in New York. The blacks didn't help Badillo. The blacks didn't help Freddie Ferrer. And here, even though I founded the Black Law Student Association and had been involved in civil rights, it was more profitable for the group that was in really powerful group that brought the mayor to be to go with them. And also, financially, it made sense for them because they got a Congress position and they got two city council positions. So for them, it was the right thing for them to do in terms of their community. But it was, it didn't help us in terms of. So by running, I think I gave other people an opportunity to say, I'm going to run too. So we've
Yeah.
had two people run for district attorney, Richard Negrin and David, who ran recently. And we also will have, I think, a Latina who may run for mayor in the next level. So I wanted to make them feel like it's really possible to run. And if you don't win, doesn't mean you give up. You got to keep pushing the next generation up to be able to get those opportunities. And it cost me a lot of money, it cost me a lot of jobs. But
Yeah.
I think if we care about our community and our people, we have to give them hope and faith and patience to make sure that they understand that they can be a part of the system and make changes that help us.
Yes. Thank you so much. If you have to change something within your life, career, what will you change, or will you leave everything as has happened?
No, no, there are a lot of things. There's a lot of things I would have changed. You know, one of the things about being an elder statesman is that you realize the mistakes that you made. I might not have taken the administrative judge position because that really was a very, very tough and difficult decision process. when Henry Cisneros and I came to HUD, I said, "Look, I'll do anything you want me to do, but I'm not going to fire anybody," because that was difficult to be able to rectify. And then the Supreme Court, after you do the work, they just go on their own, and they really do not give you the backing because it's a popularity contest after that. So that's one thing that was very, very difficult. I might have still done it, but there are things that you sort of contemplate in your life. Um, I think that I had opportunities that I gave up, which are difficult for me. I had a scholarship to Wharton, and I walked away from the scholarship, and I should have taken that. That would have been 2 years of education at Wharton. That would have opened up more opportunities on corporate boards because I would have had the commercial and the business education. I think that there were other things that I gave up. I gave up a boardship on Comcast when it first opened back in the 1980s. And if I had been on the board of Comcast, imagine what the stock is worth today, back from 1980. And I also think that I just opened up professorship at Temple, the Diaz professorship is in my name, but I really would like to have developed a
Mhm.
chair,
Mhm.
a chair at the law school that provides education on what we as a community have contributed to the civil rights of this country.
Mhm.
We can cover the stories of our Supreme Court and what they've done, of how we changed the jury system, how we opened up many legal systems in behalf of our community, despite the fact that when we're on the island, we don't have the same rights.
Thank you so
It's
much.
important.
Thank you so much for all you have done. As you know, the time always is against us, and
Yeah,
I want.
but Maryland is it really for our community. I think it's important that people realize we're not we're not doing this to really get the gratitude. We're doing it because it makes us all better, and it makes our children realize that dreams are possible and that they should get the chance. I was not the smartest. I just was the most painful person in the community. I was a pain in the butt to people. And that's what sort of pushed the envelope.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for the legacy that you're leaving to all of us, for our people, to the community. And I want to thank everyone who is watching right now. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, USALA Media, and please pass on this information yourself, Honorable Diaz. And thank you, Maria Serranos, for my look today, because we have to acknowledge the people in the community. She had given me this look today, and she's located at 4321 North 5th Street. Thank you so much for making me beautiful for this wonderful interview, the first edition of USALA Media with Marilyn Rodriguez. Again, I want to thank everyone, and I guess it'll be to the next time, Judge. We have to do this in Spanish. Ni de
Oh,
aquí,
úsala,
ni
ni
de
de
allá.
allá. Y hay que hacerlo porque si no, la gente se olvida de nuestro idioma.
One last words for our USALA followers.
I like this. I like the name. So we got to get a jingle. Usala, usala, usala.
Well,
It's a
this is your
wonderful.
time, Judge. This is your time.
And I have to tell you that I hope that you get the book. All the money goes to Temple. I don't get the money. It goes to Temple Law School for the benefit of our community. And I tell you that I hope that it inspires you and inspires our children to make sure that at 15 years old, life is not over. Was not over for me. And even though I was analphabet, I was illiterate. I tell you, my life changed, and I was able to contribute to the progress and to the benefit of our communities, not only locally but nationally.
Thank you so much. The book is available for purchase. Where can they go, Judge?
They can go to the Temple or to Amazon. Amazon has it available, and Temple has it also available. And I think they also have one of these, the board where they have it on that kind of reading that you can put it on a computer board. So I hope you get it, and I hope you contribute to the Temple University Latino chair with that contribution. And it's really I did it because los puertorriqueños, we don't tell our story. We don't tell the fact that we struggle. We've done as much as we can to make life better, and somehow the system doesn't appreciate all of that struggle.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Honorable Nelson Diaz. We'll be to the next time.
USALA Media, serving the greater Philadelphia region, giving you top quality programming. All this and more found on USALA Media, your voice, your media center.